Good to see you guys. You're writing, at least. You guys are alive, doing well. We have some things to cover tonight. We're going to get started. Hope that you guys enjoyed your peacetime. That sounds ominous. I didn't mean to say it like that. I didn't mean to. Okay, wait, let me answer something. No, I won't do it yet. We'll do it in a few minutes. Let me write a note down, guys. I'm going to write this note down because I'll forget. Now, I can't tell you what this note is, but I'll write it down. I'm at COT now, so I can, I can let it roll. Some of you might want to buckle up. Today's topic, today, the waking begins. You guys awake? You think you're awake? Hopefully you are. Most people say, yes, I'm awake. I am awake. The waking begins. You guys awake? You think you're awake? Hopefully you are. Most people say, yes, I'm awake. I am awake. Right? Isn't that what most of us say? I can assure you that we're about to wake up. And if you guys don't mind, I'd like to share with you guys some potentials that you have. All right? Now, if at any time my voice drops out as I'm speaking, please let me know. Don't strain to hear me. It's what I'm saying. Just let me know. And if it's collective, not just one or two, but more than one or two, I'll let you guys. So it's very good to see you guys. It really is. Really is. I was extremely busy this weekend, and I believe Saturday, the entire day of Saturday. I think it was I believe it was. Sunday, same thing. Yes, I still have the sniffles, as expected. You know what it is, guys? It's a change in altitude. When you go from one level to the other, that change in altitude can cause, especially for me, I'm going to let you guys in on something, right? When they did x-rays on me when it was a long time ago, right? I have an extra set of sinuses. Don't think that's weird. I just have an extra set of sinuses and two more than normal, right? And so what that does is it really helps when I'm underwater or way up in the air, right? It does not help when I'm at standard altitude. So, and believe it or not, just about everybody has some sort of internal deformity that's not like anybody else's. Minor. I'm not one of these, what do they call me? I forgot what they call me. Anyway, but that's just the way it is. It's the way it is. Anyway, we have some things to cover. If my volume gets low, please let me know. Please let me know. And I'll lift up that volume. Now, today's title, The Waking Begins, right? The waking, not walking, waking. That means to be awake, to be aware. While many people will say they are aware, believe it or not, most of us sit in the seat of denial. We've not been tested in strenuous conditions. And one of the best places to start with this conversation is in the Bible. Now, many of you may be familiar with the Apocrypha text, which is part of the Septuagint. And you may be familiar with Ezra's, which is actually the writings of Ezra, who was with Jeremiah, by the way, the weeping prophet. And because what they were stating is very consistent. In fact, what Ezra said is very consistent in the King James Version of the Bible. The books that we have. I'm going to read some of the more apocrypha things. He was talking to Uriel. I'm going to read to you guys what Uriel was saying. Kind of go over these notes. It's in chapter 5 of 2nd Esdras. We're going to go over that piece by piece because it's an eye-opener. If this does not wake a Christian up and say, wait a minute, because if this chapter was read 12 years ago, no big deal. No big deal. It would be somewhat of an enigma, right? But we're reading it now. And when you read it now, it takes on a whole new meaning. And it should give you somewhat of an enigma, right? But we're reading it now, and when you read it now, it takes on a whole new meaning. And it should give an extra boost to those who are looking for a transition about now, right? It's true, we have some very rough things coming. But personally, I wouldn't want anybody to go through those times with on the wrong side. You don't want to be sealed on the wrong side, right? And we do have some consolations from Christ. But these are very sincere declarations made to those who believe in Christ. You know if you believe or not. You do. You know if you believe or not. It also defines some things that Jesus talked about. Remember, the Lord said, or the Bible was talking about people who have not tasted. And it's going to be clarified tonight. So it's not metaphorical. It's literal. It's so funny when people think things are metaphorical, right? And to be honest with you, a lot of people will think things are metaphorical because it's just easy to handle that way. If you take something literal, it can become scary. And people don't want to live their lives and mess up the picture they have created of what they think salvation is, of what they think the end times are. And so we're trying to get away from that. We don't want to paint a picture in our minds of what we think the end times are. We want to be open to the knowledge of the Lord so that we may observe the truth and walk by truth, right? Also, many people are held in bondage when you're sleeping. A person who is sleeping is actually in prison, right? You're locked up. It's like somebody else has the controls. You don't want to be in a dream with yourself in bondage again, because everybody has done this. Everybody, it's what the Bible says. Everybody has done this. In the liberty they had, they put themselves in bondage. It's time for us to get out of bondage, right? Also, some of the ties that we have here at COT, we're going to have to make them stronger. The enemy is at work, and we're going to read tonight the end results of that work, and it is not good. It's not good. Now, we're talking about believers. We're not talking about non-believers. We're talking about believers. So this truly is a time to be awake, to really be awake, to open your eyes, to no longer ignore, but to learn to be sober, accept what the Lord said. Let the Lord define everything, right? Let him define it. We can read it. We can speculate, but I can tell you right now, there are many people who have speculated over the years. Let the Lord define everything, right? Let him define it. We can read it. We can speculate, but I can tell you right now, there are many people who have speculated over the years. It's turned out to be no good. Speculation is no good. You don't have to speculate in this season. This season is going to be rough. It's kind of like, I'll go ahead and bring it up. You know how people have been talking about these sheep? Right? The sheep. Everybody's talking about the sheep because it is interesting. Right? And it's the only thing that amazes me. Well, it's a few things that amaze me because I'm a believer. And because I'm a believer, I see things by faith. I'm always looking for the voice of the Lord. And many of you have written into me saying, Mike, what are these sheep doing? Well, they're walking in circles. That's what they're doing. But it's not only sheep. You have buffalo, bison. You have all sorts of animals walking in these circles, but the sheep numbering everything else, right? But why are they walking in circles? And why does this number 12 and 13 keep popping up? Well, see, that's what got me. If they were just walking in circles continuously, right? I'd say, okay, that's might want to check them out. Or it could be, some anomaly somewhere. That's not what they did. They walked around 12 or 13 times and they quit. And you know what? That instantly made me remember something. I have not said anything yet. Didn't say anything yet. I didn't say anything because normally when you say something too quick, right? I normally say part of something. I'm guilty of that. I don't give the whole thing. I say part of something. And then I leave the rest for later. Well, normally when I say part of something, it'll get picked up. People will add to it. And then it will somewhat, the the whole. So, but they're walking around in these circles 12 and 13 times. 12 and 13 times. That's amazing to me. And they just so happens they are sheep. Now, the bison, I don't believe are walking around 12 or 13 times, right? So when I looked at some of what people were counting, and this is funny. It didn't matter if they're making up the number, estimating what the case is. These people from different locations keep reporting that these sheep are walking around, and when they're about to walk the 13th time, they disband, which means they don't walk out the 13th time. They walked around there 12 times, right? And then it's almost like they walk 12 times, start walking 13 times, and they quit. You know, that matches something in the Bible. When they were marching around Jericho, don't you guys remember? 6 days. They marched around Jericho, around there 7 times. Add those two numbers. What is 6 plus 7? You see there? Oh, wait a minute. I just messed everybody up because everybody was saying 13 is evil. I don't get into gematria. I don't get into numerical values equating something good or evil. I normally go by the word of God. Now, clearly, he told them to march around Jericho, right? 6 days, and on the 7th day, they went around 7 times. You know what number that is? That's 13. That's not a bad number, is it? See, so listen, folks, this is part of being this is part of the waking, right? When a person wakes up, because sometimes we can be given over to these earthly sayings. Folks, I'm going to tell you what I did. I'm going to let you know what I did, right? I'm going to let you know what I did. I was sitting there analyzing. We can be given over to these earthly sayings. Folks, I'm going to tell you what I did. I'm going to let you know what I did, right? I'm going to let you know what I did. I was sitting there analyzing all these ghost shows. I got so irritated. I did. I got so irritated watching these ghost shows. I'm going to go over, probably this weekend when we're talking about weapons, I'm going to go over everything they were saying. So I took notation of everything they were saying, their commentary. I went and searched, and they have the world believing them about these spirits. I was so irritated because in their statements, I could hear Satan clearly. I could hear him. I could hear his voice. I really could. That's what irritated me. It was that influence of darkness, of ignorance. Is what I could hear him. I could hear his voice. I really could. That's what irritated me. It was that influence of darkness, of ignorance. Is what it was. And just to be honest with you, I could scarcely believe what I was perceiving. But you think that the voice of Satan would, do the trick, right? No. If Satan were by himself, Jimmy cracked corn. I don't care about him. I don't. He did his thing. That's up to him. But he's affecting people. And that's where the irritation comes in. When people are given over to fairy tales, to all these explanations. Now, looking at the video, I'm going to tell you guys right now, I can look at a video. And usually, if I see and recalling everything I observed down to the smallest detail, right? That's where it comes from. And I told you guys about the training we had. They would have us look at a forest for a second or two. And that's it, cover our eyes. And we had to go back and name about 22 things we saw in the forest that stood out. Well, the first time I took that test, I saw nothing. They threatened us too. They said, if you guys don't find 22 items when this cyclist finished, you're going to fail this DE Select school. That makes everybody nervous, right? And so, but at the end of it, not only did I see the 22, but I also saw some of the props, some of the prop evidence. In other words, I could see the evidence of somebody walking through that forest some of the branches that were not consistent with the rest of the branches. And we could actually draw them out. All of us did this. We could actually draw them out. And we found all 20 were not consistent with the rest of the branches. And we could actually draw them out. All of us did this. We could actually draw them out. And we found all 22 items. But we also found traces of where people have walked and placed things. And they didn't expect that. I really got good at that. In art, possibly, I'm a visual person. So if I see something, I can go over that something in my head, right? In school, sometimes I would cheat. I really would, especially when it came to geometry. I would look at a page in geometry and shut the book. Nobody understood that, but I was able to recall the entire page. So I could kind of just sit there and daze out, but I'm looking at the page, reading it over and over and over again. And I guess I did that so much, I got really good at it. And so, people found out, basically, and that was utilized in my professionally, and that was utilized in my professional career. So, but anybody can do that, by the way. It's not anybody can do that, right? I could sit down and train anybody to do that. Anybody. I mean, anybody. I can make you shock yourself, right? As far as what your mind is able to do. And believe it or not, it's all unlocked by faith, because anybody who was under training, my training, who did not believe they could do it, I already told them they were going to fail, because they're not going to give it a chance. They're going to blank their mind and fill it up with hogwash and nonsense. They're going to get frustrated and give up. All those people say, I don't know if I can do it or not, all of them passed, right? So there it is. It's by faith. If you don't believe you can do something, you will not give it your absolute best efforts. When you try something and you give it your best efforts, you're going to be surprised at what you can accomplish else. And you will be able to do it. And believe it or not, those who are mentally strong, right, and coming up with some sort of specific result, they're going to get that result because they begin to maneuver everything around them for that result during that time, all right? But back to this topic. Let me not get far off this topic. When I was looking or observing some of these guys, my findings were they're just not good. They line up biblically with a time that nobody ever thought they would see themselves in. I certainly do hope that you guys have not fallen prey to some of the ignorance I see expressed in some of these folks who are clearly they're getting guidance from dark forces. You know why? Because in the times of old, if you were to go back and get some of the writings of these people in the times of old, right? What they're saying today, they said back then. They're act ones. They were not. Back then, they thought they were small children. They were not. Back then, they thought they were, people coming to be guardians over them. That's not what they were. They were trying to get into people's lives. And as this continues, there are manifestations and the surfacing of many things that were extinct. They're all coming back. Now, when I say extinct, forget about dinosaurs. Forget about that. This earth was plagued with the children of the fallen angels. They were everywhere. And we're talking about beasts. Remember that the fallen angels also corrupted animals. That means wildlife has a potential corruption to it that you have not been introduced to. And it is deadly. It is very deadly, right? These things are coming back slowly. And it may sound off the wall right now, but it will not as the days continue. Because it's the process. It is very deadly, right? These things are coming back slowly. And it may sound off the wall right now, but it will not as the days continue. Because the process is already beginning. And people are finding it exciting, not understanding that these things have been given no authorization to destroy humanity. But these things are taking inventory of everybody they're going to be given access to. And whoever they're given access to will not escape what they're going to do to them. And in those days, men will seek death and they will not find it. So these things are happening. Now, as far as you guys who believe in Christ, You are observers. Everything you see, every situation you've been in, right? Every single one is purposed. Time that we with the Lord teaches us. If Christ is raising us, how then can anything happen to us that will just skip the eye of the Almighty? It will not. So that means every pain, every nuisance, every good time, bad time in your life has been purposed for your deliverance. It is time to see it that way, analyze it, and grow from it. Grow from it. Because God has given us every single opportunity to grow. And I'm going to use that number, again, that number 13, right? If we only subscribe to the world's view or what the world believes in, I'll tell you something. If too many people agree with something, I'm backing off. If too many people believe in something, I'm backing off. Because chances are they're believing in something delusional. I'm not going to be in anything delusional because the flesh is, all of you contend with your own flesh, your own desires. You contend with that. That's why the Lord said, die to your flesh daily. That means every single day. It's almost like you're going to be at war, or at least trying to put down things of your flesh to go forward spiritually every day, right? Some people look at that term, die to your flesh daily, and they think it's died to a little bit this day, a little bit tomorrow. No, that's every day you die to it. How do I know that? Because that was part of the common dialect back during that time. That phrase was also copied or utilized by the Greeks. It was utilized by the Greeks, and that's precisely what it meant, is every day. They didn't say die to the flesh daily, though. They said they were dying to, what they call it, some weird name because they didn't like the Grecians did not like what Rome was doing and what they believed in. They thought it was flawed. So they wanted their pantheon to go forward, not the Greeks. So they said, don't believe in the Romans' ideologies about gods, believe in our stuff about gods. And so they said, die to that influence daily. That's what they said, basically, die to that. But they used that same verbiage, right? Die to it daily. They used the same thing. And it was, in fact, the same translated word utilized in the Word of God. So there it is. When you, and I've been around, in fact, even right now, I work with some very notable experts. And there's one guy that speaks 15 languages. I don't know who speaks 15 languages? How in the world that guy must be, he's smart. He is smart. He speaks 15 languages. How in the world that guy must be, he's smart. He is smart. He's not always all there all the time, but it's almost like he turns into a different person when he speaks another language, right? Somebody says 15 languages. My goodness, 115, I don't think he'd have a brain left to speak anything else, to do anything else but speak a bunch of languages, right? One time I got involved in let's say ciphering things, taking ancient text and then breaking that down into binary and test functions and coming up with ways to decrypt it, right? And I got involved in that. I thought it was very interesting, very interesting. It is mathematical, of course, but it was very interesting, amazing. Nowadays they do it with computers, so any cipher snipping that you do with that is not as complex as what they did back then. But they were amazing back then, amazing. Anyway, I'm very nosy when it comes to ancient text. I am very nosy, and the reason why is because there's a story within all of us. Right? A story that we would like an answer to. Many of you suspect, you look around and you say, this can't be it. This cannot be all of what, things are. This can't be it. What am I missing? And so you end up in life, you end up being drawn to those things you could potentially be missing. Now, my My way is to go to the Lord, and I will pester him to know something, right? I really will. I do trust his guidance, so when he does not tell me anything, I'm fine with that, but he does. He will prepare me. God, remember for something. God will prepare you. If you're going to receive something, he will prepare you to receive it. Remember that. So sometimes when you pray for something, you're not ready to receive what you asked for. But if you truly desire something that is in the realm of righteousness, right? And God decides he's going to allow you to have that, he will prepare you to have that. Remember something, what he gives to us, we have to be stewards over for the most part, all right? In a lot of cases, we'll ask for things we have no experience with. And so he has to give us experience. So when you pray for something and things seem to go wrong, just keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Right? Many people will say, well, it went wrong. It's the devil. And they give up and they go somewhere else. And then they go through life. They don't obtain what they could have because they're not willing to be. Just keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Right? Many people will say, well, it went wrong. It's the devil. And they give up and they go somewhere else. And then they go through life. They don't obtain what they could have because they're not willing to be trained, prepared, taught, right? To be good stewards over what the Lord gives us. Because he gives good gifts, not bad gifts. Remember that. Because, this common saying of be careful what you ask for. You don't have to do that. Why would a good father, right? If a child, a small 3-year-old said, I want a big knife that's sharp that can cut anything. Now, why would that father grant that wish, that request to that child? A good father is not going to do that. An evil father would, right? A vindictive father would, a foolish father would, not a good father. So this worldly saying, be careful what you ask for, you may get it, that's hogwash. That's hogwash. Because we have a good father, not a trickster. We don't have a trickster. We have to overturn within ourselves, not to agree with the world. Because if you're taught of the world, right? If you're taught of the world and you're going forward with worldly teachings, trying to pursue Christ, I think you're going to come up far short. I really do. But seek the Lord. Seek what he gives you. Take care of what he gives you, right? Don't reject your circumstances and everything that comes. He made you overcomers. It's impossible that he does not see everything you go through. We have to be careful to realize he knows exactly what he's doing, right? Now, before I can say another word, right? Everybody in here, you know what a complaint is, right? Does everybody know what a complaint is? What happens when we complain about our lives? What happens? What happens? What are we actually doing when we complain about our lives? What are we actually just cursing it? What else are we doing? Not trusting? What are we doing? I'm going to tell you something. It sounds terrible, but that's the way it is. I want you guys to ponder it because I'm going to take a break right after I say this. Somebody says whining. Yeah, we're doing all those things, but what are we actually doing? You ready? Because I'm going on break. Here we go. Here it is. You know what you're actually doing when you're complaining? You're saying you do not like the way the Father's raising you. Not good, is it? That's not good. That is not good. When you complain about your life, the Lord is intimately involved in your life, whether you know it or not. And you're really saying, I don't like the way you're raising me. Think about that. It's easier to say, right? You're full of unbelief. It's easier to say you're whining. It's easier to say you're disrespectful. But to say to the face of the living God, I don't like the way you're raising me. That's what a complaint is. Because when you're complaining, it's because you don't like what's happening around you. Think about it. Now you know why murmuring and complaining tempts the Lord our God, because that's essentially saying, I do not accept the way I'm being raised. Because there's but one raising you on the earth. You know that, don't you? Your Father in heaven. Your royal children. You have a massive inheritance. You're being raised by the Creator of all things. That's done through Christ. And when you complain by the Creator of all things, that's done through Christ. And when you complain, He's the one that set up your situation, whether you think you did it or not. You're saying you don't like the way He's raising you. I got one more thing for you to do. One more. I want you guys to think about something while we're on break. You ready? Many of you, along with the complaints, there's no more contentment within you. No more. Hear me on this. Right? Because many people they just want something right now. There's nothing wrong with that. Right? Nothing wrong with that. When you want something. There's nothing wrong if you want something from the Most High with that. Right? Nothing wrong with that. When you want something. There's nothing wrong if you want something from the Most High. Because to want something from the living God is actually faith. Just in case you didn't know that. If you didn't have faith in the Most High, you wouldn't ask Him for anything, would you? So asking Him for something is faith. Just so you know that. But I'll leave you with this thought. And then when I come off break, we're going to continue with this conversation. Here's that thought. I want you to settle it in your minds and in your hearts and in your souls. What do you want Christ to do for you? I'll be right back in a few minutes, right here at the Council of Time. Okay, everybody, I'm back. I know it was a short break. Questions are piling up. Boy, you guys, why do you ask the good questions when I'm going break? Somebody asked a question. They said, you guys know I love you. I do. With great passion. So, number one, I have to tell you this. I don't have to tell you, but I'm going to tell you anyway. You look around at your colleagues, seems like everybody has lost their minds. Right? Everybody is going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Right? You know what the truth is? You forgot what you prayed for. I can almost guarantee you, with great certainty, at some point, you said, Lord, use me. That's what you said. You said, Lord, use me. Didn't you say that? For all of you who are looking around and people have gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, you said, Lord, use me. You may have said that with tears because you were very sincere. That's a prayer from the soul. That's what you said. You may have said that with tears because you were very sincere. That's a prayer from the soul. That's what you said. In that moment, the truth of you desired to be of use to the Most High, to be in servitude to the Most High. It's what you prayed for. And when you prayed that prayer, and you were very sincere, that was a prayer of all prayers. Because your heart and your mind and your mouth were perfectly aligned. And in that moment, you spoke a truth. When your heart, your mind, and your mouth are aligned, you're not speaking hypocrisy. And that prayer is going to be heard because there was no hypocrisy in that prayer. When you did that, and you said you forgot. You prayed for that. You said that, and your answer has come. Now with your eyes opened, you're starting to see beyond the presentation of those around you. You're starting to see the issues of an individual. You're starting to see them. And when you see them, you say, well, what's wrong with these people? There's nothing wrong with those people. They've been the same way. Your eyes have been opened up just a little bit more, that you may observe the truth of them. But you can't say, oh, boy, I can't be around here because you prayed. You wanted to be of use. Why would God, if a person wanted to be of use to the Most High, we know that Jesus established the gospel, right? You're going to be of use to the gospel of Jesus Christ, which will stand until he comes back. So if you want to be of use, it's going to be with the gospel, correct? And if you carry the gospel, he didn't mean for any of us to carry the gospel to the folks in the pews who already received it. No. You're to be sent to the lost. You're to be sent to the blind, to the deaf, to the folks who can't walk, can't see, can't comprehend. He put you right smack dab in the middle of it and open your eyes to it to show you the work. Don't run away when you see the work. That happens a lot. It does, because in most cases we envision a clean work, don't we? We go ahead and say it, we do. We envision a clean work where we don't even get dirty. Oh, yeah. We envision a clean work where we don't even get dirty. Oh, yes, I want to serve the Lord. You got your white robes on, right? No dirt on your hands, clean, smell good, everything is fresh. And you want to walk through the green fields to another person who is fresh and clean, and that's not where the work is. That's where the rest is. The rest we can now enter into. That's where that is. But that's not the work. The work, it smells bad. They speak bad. They think bad. They're seeing bad. They're doing bad. They don't know how to get out of the mess they're in. He said, if you're going to be sent with the gospel, he's going to put you right down in the middle of chaos. But you've already been there. You just didn't know it. And your eyes have been open to it. And the first thing you said, but that's not the work. The work, it smells bad. They speak bad. They think bad. They're seeing bad. They're doing bad. They don't know how to get out of the mess they're in. He said, if you're going to be sent with the gospel, he's going to put you right down in the middle of chaos. But you've already been there. You just didn't know it. And your eyes have been open to it. And the first thing you said was, oh, boy, these glasses work. Because it's ugly around here, right? Isn't that what you're saying? That's where the work is. Work while it's day. Because when the night comes, no man can work. Pray to the Lord of the harvest. You're right there where you need to be. So don't look at the people like something is wrong with them. Giving you, that's where you're needed. I only have one small piece of advice. Get into your word. Walk out the gospel. This is your time. Right there where you are in that midst of corruption. Live the gospel that people may see. And the Lord will do things in your life you never thought possible. Because your life will become a ministry. It's not really what you say. It's what they're going to see. That's what's going to matter. What they see is going to matter. Please remember that. Because they're watching. They know exactly who you are, don't they? They know what you're about, don't they? Stay in the gospel of Jesus Christ and walking out. This is your chance. Perfect Father is already in control. You're a light in this world now. And a light is not meant to be put underneath a bed. A lit city on the side of a hill cannot be hid. It's going to be seen. So you will be the spectacle. You will draw the criticism. You'll be that one, but a day will come because they know who you are, whether in secret or openly. It'll be a blessing that they come to you. And you can drive that ambulance right to Christ. Well, now you know. Now you know, right? Now you know. Most people love the clean work, right? Now you know. Most people love the clean work, but there's no such thing as a clean work. There is a such thing as a good work and the good fight of faith. As far as dealing with your leaders, you don't deal with your leaders. Your Father in heaven does. It is our responsibility to be ambassadors, to represent the gospel of Jesus Christ, to agree with the kingdom. Men are going to be men. Surrender control. We're not here to control people. We're here to get those who are marked for salvation, to represent the kingdom, so that the voice they're trying to hear may one day come through you. Or you may assist in them hearing that voice, so that the voice they're trying to hear may one day come through you. Or you may assist in them hearing that voice that they will truly listen to. The harvest is ready, but the laborers are few. Please remember that. Somebody says Mixlr is cutting up, jumping to side. Listen, guys, with Mixlr, let me pause real quick, because they changed the artwork, right? If you know how, if you clear your internet cache, that is to say your cache is just a collection of files and cascading style sheets or images and placement of images. If you clear your cookies, right, you'll be good to go. Clear your internet cache, you'll be good to go. Your computer will then go, your device will go get brand new pictures that will align with the site, and it won't jump all over the place. Okay? Won't jump all over the place. Got that? Can I help you out? Hold on. Right? We are having spikes in numbers in Mixlr. We have spikes lately. Like the actual number right now, I can see the actual number right now is like flip-flopping. It looks like 3 to 5, back down to 3, because it's just, a lot of people try to log in at one time. Not that I'm popular or anything. I just truly believe, you know what it is? I honestly believe people can hear my sincere passion. It's not really the knowledge base. That's not what it is. It's something. I am grateful for that. That's what that is. But back to our conversation. That's part of the waking up to see what's real and what's not, to see what the Lord said is real and what's not, right? To act on what's real and what's not. You'd be surprised of what we are not responsible for. And sometimes, guys, we can take on responsibilities that are not our responsibility. We can take on too much, and our lives get cluttered, and we find ourselves trying to control all the noise in our lives. That's why I keep saying surrender control. Surrender that. Give that. Let go of that. Let the Lord walk before you. See, if he's going to walk before you, he'll also set the scene. He'll also guide you. The steps of a righteous man. Or let go of that. Let the Lord walk before you. See, if he's going to walk before you, he'll also set the scene. He'll also guide you. The steps of a righteous man are ordered of the Lord. Right? Let him walk before you. In a lot of cases, we have tried to establish our own walk. We have. And it doesn't work out too well. We stumble and do things we shouldn't do. And that creates an atmosphere of, it's not very authentic at times. If we let go of control, really let go of control and realize that the Father is already in control, right? That his outcome is what we seek to have established in our lives. Because I don't know about you, I don't want my outcome. I want his outcome, not mine. I want his outcome. I want the leading of Christ. It's not a very smooth walk I was doing there, right? And it really fools a person because sometimes it looks like in your life that you have everything under control. I'm telling you right now, when you feel that way, you do not have everything under control. You're in compliance with something that usually is not established with the Most High. You don't want that. When you feel like you're in control, that's when you've actually lost control. That's when it's over. You've lost control. Because everybody I know of who likes control, they end up being bitter. They do. It comes out in their conversation. It comes out in certain, things that they do. You guys know it because all of us, to a degree, have tried to control our lives to some point. We know how we get. We get bitter. If something gets out of control, we start complaining, start doing all sorts. Ask the best questions at break. But we have one that asks me, she'll ask the best questions. Only one so far. Well, she has the title of asking the best ones so far. You know who that is? That's that pink lady. I don't know where she is, but that's her. Like sometimes a child will ask you a question and you can't give an answer because it's so innocent, so thorough, so true. So beyond our intellect. Our mouth just hangs open. We try to change the subject and do anything to get away from it. That happens sometimes, right? I like the questions of kids. They're so funny. They are incredibly funny. Anyway, guys, back to this waking, right? Hopefully so far you guys can see that, yes, they're waking, right? Hopefully so far you guys can see that, yes, there are ploys and natural things in the world that will take you away, far away from the kingdom standards that Jesus has established. It's something I have to watch on a daily basis, that my trust of the world and that my dependency on things of the world and in the world I have to keep those things in check because I could easily be lost in technology. I could easily be consumed. All my time can be consumed with silly things that will end up being nothing. Any engineer out there understands that you can work on things for years that will end up being nothing. You can devote your time to projects that end up being nothing. You can waste a lot of years, right? And it will amount to, right? And it will amount to nothing. And that's what happens because a lot of engineers, they become obsessive about the work. They want to establish some type of perfection with what they're doing. And so nothing is ever completed or finished. And that happens. You got to be careful of that. You got to be careful of that with people also. And it truly is a case of putting Christ first. That takes your conscious effort. That's not something that just comes naturally. That's something you're going to have to do on a daily basis, is to put the Lord first. He should not be below your worries. You should put Christ above every worry in your life, lest that worry be your salvation. And then put Christ well above it. Right? Always do that. Never let fear, never let worry, never let these emotional feedback systems that we have within ourselves, never let those things have a seat. Put God, and make sure that in your life, God is always on the throne. Never dethrone him in your life. Don't do that. Because if you do, whatever is above the Most High, that's what you're worshiping. That's what you're kneeling to. And people kneel to bills. They do. They kneel to their bank account. They kneel to a bunch of stuff. They kneel to knowledge. They kneel to all sorts of things. Shouldn't Christ be above all that? Let nothing take precedence above the Lord our God. Right? That's something we're going to have to, that's something that a person is charged to do based upon themselves. Now listen, here's the deal. No one can force you to worship, because if they do, it's not worship. Worship is something that is volunteered out of you, out of your innards. That's something that you appear, then you're not worshiping. You're just following my lead. That's not worship. Worship is when you voluntarily observe the Most High or observe something. That's why that word worship is tied so close to voluntary observance. Like in this nation, people worship idols like you wouldn't believe, and they put them above the Most High. If God were above everything in our lives, how then could we ever worry about anything? And even if you had a worry, wouldn't you overcome that through prayer to the Most High on his throne? And if we kept him on his throne, how then could we panic? Because if he's on the throne in your life, you're going to build that trust there, confidence there. That's where people worship idols like you wouldn't believe, and they put them above the Most High. If God were above everything in our lives, how then could we ever worry about anything? And even if you had a worry, wouldn't you overcome that through prayer to the Most High on his throne? And if we kept him on his throne, how then could we panic? Because if he's on the throne in your life, you're going to build that trust there, confidence there. That's where it's always going to be. And you're going to say, Jimmy crack corn. That's what you'll say. Something bad will happen. You'll say, well, Jimmy crack corn. And if your conscience is not seared, but if your conscience is clear, you're going to say, Lord, I did everything in all honesty. I did everything I know how to do. So I'm going to stand. And you'll smile. You won't stand in fear. You won't stand being broken. Because you exhausted everything you know how to do. And when you do that, that's where your strength comes from. I'm trying to give you something here, because this I know for a fact. I have stood in the place where people fall every hour. And I'm telling you right now, when you exhaust what you know how to do. Now, listen, I can't exhaust what you know how to do. I can only exhaust. I can only do those things I truly know how to do. I can only pray how I know how to pray. I can only serve the Lord in that capacity of those areas he has allowed me to know of. When you exhaust that, I'm telling you right now, you will stand in the highest of confidence. You'll say, Lord, from the depths of my heart and soul, you are that rod of iron in my life. And I'll stand here and you'll say, Jimmy crack corn to everything else. That's when you stand in faith. You cannot stand in faith if you leave things undone. How many know that? You leave something undone, your conscience is not going to be clear. Your conscience is going to be bothered. And when you do that, you cannot stand at all. You'll stand and then you'll say, well, oh my gosh, I left something undone. I should have did it, and I can't, I can't even stand up straight, because you'll start wobbling and everything else. But when you exhaust everything you know how to do, you stand differently. The world could be ending. And you'll say, Lord, I did everything I know how to do. And you'll say that in absolute honesty. And at that point, something changes. See, you don't know this, but God compliments something in you. And in that moment, you'll stand in all faith. In that moment, you'll stand in all faith, saying, Lord, I trust you. So whatever comes, glory be to your name. You don't care what it is. Satan could be yelling threats in your ear, and you just say, Jimmy crack corn. The Lord is good. You won't care what's coming. Why? Because you did everything you know how to do. That means every time you do what you know how to do in righteousness, guess what happens? You've established stewardship, good stewardship. You're not a good steward if you leave something undone. How many of you went to bed nervous last night? How many? I guess I can almost tell you right now that at least 30% of you, your sleep is bothered. 30% of you, your sleep is bothered. You have to force yourself to go to sleep and convince yourself you're going to sleep anyway and not worry about anything, right? But your conscience is not cleared. Listen to me. Go and forgive every single soul on this earth you have something against. Forgive them. Forgive them right away. Forgive them in truth. Forgive them because they're losing. Listen, if a person is that evil, they're losing the fight, and they need somebody to represent Christ in their lives. See, God will call a person, but have you noticed? He will call a person to another person on this earth. He will. That's why in the word it said, how can a person hear the word of God unless a preacher be sent? Or let someone be sent of those who are being called. And his timing is perfect timing, right? So when you look at these people with flaws who are doing evil things, remember something. Do they really know what they're doing? You don't know that. And for the most part, many of them are lost. They're losing the fight. But who in the realm of righteousness is fighting on their behalf? Who would pray that God give them that moment of clarity and then say, Lord, I stand ready. If you would use me, I stand ready right now for your sake, and not my own sake, but for your sake. So you got to remember that people are in a fight just like we were in a fight. Before we were saved, right? Before we were saved. How many times did we sit and think, oh, it's over? Oh, my life is nothing. I should just end it. Right? Before we were saved, how many times did we sit and think, oh, it's over? Oh, my life is nothing. I should just end it. How many times did you find yourself in a situation where you were the bad guy? And somebody surely could have looked upon you and called you every name in the book. But thank God, something else happened. Somehow, somebody communicated to you that the Lord loved you, didn't they? You heard that. It plagued your mind, didn't it? It got to you. Somebody spoke the word of God in your life. Somebody was obedient and spoke the word of God in your life. And you didn't hear it from everybody. See, here's the thing. Many people spoke the word of God in your life, but you didn't receive it from everybody. It was that special one that you received it from. Just that special one. That means 1,000 people could have come to you in your life, but you didn't receive it from everybody. It was that special one that you received it from. Just that special one. That means 1,000 people could have come to you and said that the Lord loves you and he wants you. You may not hear them at all. But that one person, always that one person speaks. And it's just something about that person you receive it from. You can't receive that from everybody. But there's one prepared whom you can receive it from. You see how that works? And imagine if that person was disobedient. Imagine if they were disobedient. Imagine if something had gone wrong, that you never heard that voice. What would your life be like? Surely God would have called somebody else in due time. But that could have delayed your life, right? So hear me on this, right? They potentially need someone to speak to them that they may hear it. Those people will not receive from everybody, just as we didn't. That's why I don't go through life criticizing, casting people down. I don't do that. You know why? Do you know why? Because I was cast down. I was. It was a different way. Maybe not like I was cast down in the worst way. You can put it that way. I know what that is. I know what it is. I know what it is to be excommunicated. I know what it is to be pushed aside. I know what those things are. I know what it is to cry out and no one answers. I know what it is to pray and nothing comes. I know what it is. Do you know what it is? Because I know what it is. And every time I see these people out there doing things that are, I don't care how dark it is. Do you not know that I have no problem stepping in the darkest of places and saying, Lord, show me, who am I here for? And I will say whatever the Lord gives me because I understand what it is to be in that same darkness. I know what being lost is. All of us do. All of us understand what pain is. We understand it. We can't deny it. We're not the saved who deny that we were in the darkness. We're the ones of whom God brought out of the darkness into the marvelous light. Are we not? So how could we come out of the darkness into the marvelous light? Are we not? So how could we come out of this place of death and then shut the door behind us that nobody else can enter in? I'm not that person. I'll never be that person. Not ever. Forgive those people. Don't join in with the world because you'll build up hatred within yourself. You'll open doors to spirits and say, come on in. I agree with you, that accusing spirit. Don't do that. Don't do that another day. Shut that door to them. You shut that door. See, I'll give you no promises. I'm not going to say you shut that door and God's going to restore your whole life. Nope, because guess what? I need not say a thing. The Lord has already declared what will take place. It is time. The Lord has already declared what will take place. It is time for many of you to experience his peace. Because if you ever had his peace, you'll not depart from it. You'll not go back. You're not going to go back to chaos. You won't do it. You'll say, nope, 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 nope. I don't want that chaos. I'll be no part of that chaos. I want the Lord's peace. I will sit in this seat of love he offered me. That means you're in a constant state of healing. That means you are the healed. That means he actually fixed you. That's what it means. See, that's a whole nother side. And you know what will keep you from experiencing the Messiah at that level? No, I will not hear that person. I won't. I don't entertain gossip like that ever. I don't. I will not hear it. Nor will that won't even affect me in my brain. Because I don't operate like that. In fact, if somebody ever came to me and said, this person, so-and-so is no good, do you not know that I will love that person even more? I'll love them through all that sin to do the Lord's work. I mean, truly love that brother or sister beyond every fault they have, every sin they committed. You know why? Because Jesus died on the cross and took my place. I should have been on my own cross, crucified. Everybody should have spat at me and turned their backs, and that whole cross and everything else should have fell right down in the pit of hell. But it didn't. Get that? That has become my strength. And when it comes to my neighbor, I can freely love my neighbor because I'm not like the world. I'm not going to say, prove yourself to me, then I'll love you. That's nonsense because Jesus never said that to us. I'm so thankful because I would have failed that test. I would have failed it. I'm so grateful for what the Lord did. Okay, I am. Forgive those people. Forgive them. And begin to experience what the Lord has for you. Do so in earnest, right? You can join in with the world. You can be part of the voices that condemn. What the Lord did. Okay, I am. Forgive those people. Forgive them. And begin to experience what the Lord has for you. Do so in earnest, right? You can join in with the world. You can be part of the voices that condemn. Or you can be free of this cascading effect of bitterness and enter in to a place of rest and true peace that surpasses all understanding. Authentic peace. Jesus said, I give you my peace. That's what he said. I give you my peace. I suspect that many of you have not really experienced that peace. You've experienced peace, but it's not been the peace that surpasses all understanding that is permanent in your life. Sometimes people find a place of contentment and happiness, but it's very fleeting, isn't it? It comes and it goes. You can't hold on to it. It's never sustained. What the Lord has for you, it's eternal. And nothing can remove it. Nothing. All right, guys, we're going to do this because I'm jibber-jabbing. This is 8:15. Okay, I'm going to take one more break, right? I'm going to take one more break. And then we're going to start going into the readings in 2nd Esdras. Part of the waking. I'll be right back right here at the Council of Time. My quirkiness. Okay, Esdras, 2nd Esdras. Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to highlight, but we will probably go into detail on these. Listen, guys, it's an eye-opener. It really is. 2nd Esdras, chapter 5. It's an eye-opener. It really is. It's an eye-opener because it's talking about the third kingdom. It's not talking about the second. It's not talking about the first. It's talking about the third kingdom. Now, Esdras himself, he was not part of the third kingdom. Do you guys know that? He was not part of the third kingdom. Third kingdom, well, we're in the middle of that. He talks about the things. He talks about the third kingdom, what happens in the third kingdom, and after the third kingdom. And I'm telling you, those things line up perfectly with what we have today. I mean, perfectly, right? There are also some, it's just awesome. Awesome. It's just awesome. Because it confirms quite a bit of what you guys have been saying, enduring, going through, what you've been noticing, what's been manifesting, right? And these are the Father's declarations, and they are consistent, right? Some of these are a bit detailed. They're very consistent, extremely consistent. I just want you guys to know that before I start reading, because it's one of those amazing books. I'm gonna go to it right now. Let me see. I already got it here. Let me open up this page here. I have a sheet to read right here. Esdras, chapter 5. You guys ready? Here we go. He says, nevertheless, as coming the tokens, behold, the days shall come that they, Esdras, chapter 5. You guys ready? Here we go. He says, nevertheless, as coming the tokens, behold, the days shall come that they which dwell on the earth shall be taken a great number, and the way of truth shall be hidden, and the land shall be barren of faith. You know what? The land shall be barren of faith. Now, obviously, he's talking about the lands that Esdras is in, right? And that is, if we face the truth, right, we know that to have faith is to believe in those things of the Creator, correct? But let's go ahead and get this out of the way. If you don't believe in Christ Jesus, you're not exercising faith. That means, and the Lord told us about this issue, how he had blinded his own people for a season, right? So guess what? They don't really as a whole accept. That's what that is. Having no, yes, they know the Old Testament, right? Yes, they know the Septuagint there, but they don't believe that the Messiah has come as a whole. And the Lord blinded them purposely that they would not believe, so that the word could come to us and the power of the holy people could be distributed. Right? It says, but iniquity shall be increased above that which now thou seest, or that thou hast heard long ago. Now that is a statement of statements that goes along with what Jesus said. He said, these days that we live in right now, iniquity it's going to flourish like the grass, right? That is going to be high. In fact, the true sign of the harvest when the angels come and they start separating for real, right, is when the iniquity for the press is full, right? So flowing it, the iniquity is great on the earth. Thrust in thy sickle, statements like that start coming up. So we know that's part of the harvest, and we can see right now that iniquity in the world right now, iniquity is just rampant. It really is rampant. In fact, there were folks just a couple of generations ago that would not believe the earth and people would be in this condition right now. Iniquity is high in the earth. Just about every single abomination you can think of is almost legal. It really is. It's almost legal. And if that's not the height of abominations, if that's not the height of iniquity, I don't know what to tell you, but it's pretty high. It's really high. And we have to be very, very, very careful, because a lot of people will enter into it, but it's pretty high. It's really high. And we have to be very, very, very careful, because a lot of people will enter into iniquity through offenses. That's why the Lord said it must need be that offenses come, but woe to him whom through they come, right? He says, and the land that thou seest now have no root, shall thou see wasted suddenly. It'll be wasted suddenly. Quickly, just almost immediately. And we continue, but if the Most High grant thee to live, thou shalt see after the third trumpet that the sun shall suddenly shine again in the night, and the moon thrice in the day. You know what that word is? Now, they altered this word in this reading. I'm not liking that reading already, because that when it's talking about this third trumpet, do you know what that word actually was? Kingdom. Kingdom. Now kingdom. Now who knew? Who would have put that together? That kingdom and trumpet were interchangeable use. It was used interchangeably in more than a few places, even in the King James Version of the Bible. That's why I like reading everything. Well, not everything. You had to be, I would caution everybody, be led of the Holy Ghost to read these books. Because if you're reading this, and you have not read the gospel of Jesus Christ, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you may be doing yourself a disservice, right? You may be doing yourself a disservice, because the keystone, the height of our faith, right? The height of it is Christ Jesus. So above all things, learn about the Lord, have your personal relationship with him. Let that relationship be authentic and true. This I would consider extra indeed. I would consider all this extra. Make sure that your relationship with Christ is not lean. Make sure it is not lean. So that makes the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the readings, very important. In Israel, there are people who know the Old Testament and all these books, but they do not know the Lord. They don't know the Lord yet. They will in time, but they don't know him. yet. And we have an opportunity to know him. So make sure you establish your relationship with Christ first, please. Be led of the Lord. For what? For what you will do, for what you will read, for how you will walk. Make sure. But if the Most High grant thee to live, thou shalt see after the third trump of the sun shall suddenly shine again in the night. And suddenly shine in the night, and the moon 3 times in a day. Right? You know, I looked at this, and this is very consistent with something that happened a long time ago, and that will happen again, because it almost tells of a cycle that's unavoidable for us. Unavoidable, right? Just totally unavoidable. Blood shall drop out of wood. Okay, that I'm familiar with. That phenomena, I'm familiar with. That phenomena, I've seen. That phenomena, I've seen. I've seen blood come out of trees. Now, not human blood. Not human blood. But the sap in a tree changing colors. There's a chemical that does that. I'm not going to spoil it yet because this weekend we have to go over some celestial things that are real and true based for us. Unavoidable. Right? Just totally unavoidable. Blood shall drop out of wood. Okay, that I'm familiar with. That phenomena, I'm familiar with. That phenomena, I've seen. That phenomena, I've seen. I've seen blood come out of trees. Now, not human blood. Not human blood. But the sap in a tree changing colors. There's a chemical that does that. I'm not going to spoil it yet because this weekend we have to go over some celestial things that are real and true based off what has already taken place, observations, things that people have endured over the centuries. Okay? Now, all wood has a set of chemicals in them. Even a 2x4 still has those chemicals in them. There's another agent, let's put it that way, that of the wood. It'll be red upon its exit. Very, very sticky. Very sticky and red. Even it's right there in the wood. In fact, if this substance, right, is gone, houses crumble. Once the blood comes out of wood, I'm going to just say blood. Once it comes out of the wood is no longer wood. There is an agent that can cause this to happen. And it's going to happen. Because as it turns out, Voyager ran right into it. This substance, which kind of corroded part of its heat sink. I believe it was on the right side. Somebody who knows about it, I think it's on the right side of Voyager. It kind of messed it up, right? The probe they sent to the moon, not to the moon, but to Mars, same thing. But this was near the point is that substance was picked up, and it wasn't supposed to be picked up because that sensor was encased, housed, and it was not even exposed to anything, but nothing can stop the substance from going into anything. It's going to go into us too when it hits, but specifically it's going to interact with wood and wood-based compounds that we have. So that's a physical thing. And it says, and blood shall drop out of wood, and the stone shall give his voice. The stone shall give his voice, and the people shall be troubled. A stone will give its voice. The rock will give its voice. A stone shall. Now that can be, a lot of people say, well, maybe that means the steady in faith will speak. It could mean that. It could mean that. But it could also mean that stones begin to vibrate, and it could mean that. But it could also mean that stones begin to vibrate and hum to the point where it will annoy everybody on the face of the earth. I've seen that phenomenon too. In fact, that phenomenon has already been recreated because it's an issue, and they don't want any of these stones near any transmitter on the earth. Do you know that? They don't want them near any critical transmitter on the earth. Because if you have certain rocks that could potentially start ringing around a transmitter, you're going to interrupt the frequencies being emitted from that antenna or from that source. And they don't want any of those stones used in the gravel, used in the roads, used in anything near these areas, right? It's a very intimate operation when they do this, because they essentially go over everything with fine-tooth comb. Everything. But on Earth, can you imagine they essentially go over everything with fine-tooth comb. Everything. But on Earth, can you imagine the entire Earth setting off a set of tones that everybody can hear? But not only that, they keep hearing. And they keep hearing until people start going insane from what they hear. That would just be insane for everybody, right? So another amazing one, and all this is in 2nd Esdras chapter 5. All of it is. And it says, and the stone shall give its voice, and the people shall be troubled. This is verse 6. And even he shall rule, whom they look not for that dwell upon the earth. And the fowls shall take their flight away together. Now, it says, even he shall rule whom they look not for that dwell upon the face of the earth. Which means this is what we're going through today. If we relent, don't pick a favorite president, don't pick a favorite politician, don't pick a favorite world leader. Relent with me right now. Relent. When all the older presidents were leading this nation, these were guys who were on the job. They seemed like presidential material. They did. They had flaws and everything else, but my point is, they saw the nation. They counted the Ten Commandments important, right? They did. They counted prayer important. They knew that God was a part of the success of this nation. They were quite serious about everything. They didn't have any personal vendettas against a soul. So it wasn't the nitpicking with them, but they were constantly on the job, right? But a time came when I don't want to degrade anybody saying this, so don't take it that way, but it seemed more normal presidential material. It just seemed like they were just characters, right? Something that was people that we didn't really believe, didn't necessarily, say 20 years ago, yeah, that person should be a leader. That's not what we were saying. They kind of stepped up, found a niche, and took it, right? Is that true or not? Because 25 years ago, we weren't pointing at these people saying that, oh, yes, I can see them as president. That's not what people were saying. They were characters. They did things in their careers, and they repeated those things they did in their careers in leadership, right? They did. So what is that? That's a person that's ruling that the people that dwell upon the earth did not really look for. They didn't really pick them out at that early stage and say that person should. What is that? That's a person that's ruling that the people that dwell upon the earth did not really look for. They didn't really pick them out at that early stage and say that person should rule. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, that's the Antichrist. No, we'll get to him shortly. We'll get to him shortly. Because the world is going to be looking for the Antichrist, always. But the world is not looking for what's being put in office now. They're not looking. How many of you 10 years ago would have said Joe Biden would be president in 2022? You would have said that. This is my point. Now, he had a position in the White House. So he was known to be a person of the White House, but not president, right? Not president. Correct? Isn't that correct? 25 years ago, I was not looking at President Trump saying he's going to be president. That's not what we picked out for qualifications. So these are the ones that nobody was actually looking for. A first-term senator? Who would point out a first-term senator saying that guy's going to be president? Well, actually, I did do that one. I did. But 25 years ago, no. 25, in the early days, no, that's not what we were saying, because even no matter what your race was or anything else, you could have been a hopeful or anything else. There was a certain type of candidate that we pre-qualified as being presidential candidates, not necessarily the people who have been running for president. To be honest with you, I'm looking at these people now. I'm just being candid with you guys. I'm looking at these folks now, and to be honest with you, I look at them and I say, well, what's going on here? Because it does not seem real. It doesn't seem real. Now, listen, response. It's been a predicted response. They've set you up to accept some things, and people accept it hook, line, and sinkers, because it's just like debate school. They're setting up this forum, right? They're forcing you to look within the confines of what they have selected, and they're causing you to argue for one side or the other. You know what that does? That locks you into their candidates, and you will not go outside of their candidates, because when you're engaged in a fight, they know, and you know it too. When you start fighting, because a competitive nature is so strong in these countries, when you begin to fight, your primary thought is, I want to win. I don't want to lose. If you want to win, you don't pick new people. You prop up the one that was leading your team. You thrust that person to the front, and you say, that's our guy. We're going to make him win no matter what. And that's what they have done to a lot of people, not just to one person, but to quite a few. And people are doing exactly as was planned. I had this conversation with somebody some years back before they were ever in the White House. I didn't have it publicly because it was so divisive. Even before Obama was president, I talked about Obama. And people didn't believe, listen, guys, I'm not special, so I'm not, pulling my own trucker horn here. I'm not doing that. Not doing that. I'm just telling you something that when you really do, when you start seeing the world through spiritual eyes, you're going to see things nobody else can see, and you can't really talk to anybody else. Because when I saw President Obama, when he was just that senator who was elected, and I said, that guy's going to be president. Everybody in my own family talk to anybody else, because when I saw President Obama, when he was just that senator who was elected, and I said, that guy's going to be president. Everybody in my own family said, no, he's not in your lifetime. But I couldn't help it. My eyes were open to it, and I stood by it. I said, that guy's going to be president. That's him. That's him. That's the one right there. That's the one. Even after him, right? Because people were saying that Obama was the Antichrist, this, that, and the other. That's not what I got spiritually. Spiritually, I got a warning. I did. And I will not repeat that warning now, but that warning came to pass. It did. That warning came, and look at the country now. For those of you who remember exactly what I said, look at what happened. And don't look at me like I'm some guy who can figure this stuff out. No, that was given to me. And don't think I'm special, because that was given. Humanity failed when what the Lord gave came to pass. In other words, our inclined direction did not take place. But what the Lord gave did not fail. Do you guys understand? Every scenario people thought up failed. Every single scenario failed. Every declaration failed. But what the Lord gave did not fail. It didn't fall. It didn't fail. You guys following me? I know people don't want to hear that, right? I don't want to provoke anybody. But the Lord should be your Lord, not people on earth. Don't turn your, people into idols. Don't do that. Don't do that. We used to have a pastor in COT who used to warn about that all the time. He did not like that. He didn't even know it, but I respected him so much because of that. I did. My goodness. Let's continue to read. Here we go. So, this is coming. This is coming. This is coming. Never happened before. It's coming. It is coming. It's coming. It's coming. Right? It is coming. And when that time comes, People in California are going to be frightened and scared. They're going to be so scared. They really are. They're going to be frightened and they're going to be scared. And when they think the trouble has passed, because nothing takes place, because they're going to talk about this trend of what happened to the birds. You watch and see. You folks, you're sitting, I'm talking to you right now. A day is coming very soon where they're going to have conversation on television of what happened to the birds and scientific theory, so on and so forth. We're going over it right now. I will not revisit this conversation again. I can tell you that now, because when it takes place, I will go over it right now. I will not revisit this conversation again. I can tell you that now, because when it takes place, I will not talk about it. I won't do it. Not when it takes place. That draws too much attention. I'm not going to do it. I'll say something beforehand, but when it happens, you don't even ask, because I'm not going to discuss it. I won't do it. Look at this. Let's continue. Verse 7. In the Sodomish sea, the Sodomish sea shall cast out fish and make a noise in the night, which many have not known, but they shall all hear the voice thereof. So we have a sea. Now this is, do you guys know what, when in the Bible in Jeremiah, when the prophet received the word that God said his children were Sodish children. That means children. Well, this sea, this name of the sea, has meaning behind it. So you might want to write it down. Now, I can't tell you. I'm not going to tell you what that means. It's important that you look up that sea, right? Here's how you spell it. Sodomitish. It's important that you look it up yourselves and you find it. That means something. It says, this sea shall cast out fish. It's going to cast out fish. Now, if a sea will cast out fish, it didn't say it was going to dry up and leave them dead. That's not what it said. It said it was going to cast them out. That term, cast something out, especially when talking about water or something like that, that's very meaningful, and it's important that you find it yourselves. I can't give you that meaning. And it says, and it's going to make a noise in the night, which many have not known, but they shall all hear the voice thereof. Listen, there shall be confusion also in many places, and the fire shall be oft sent out again. That means the fire is going to often take place again and again and again and again. The fires is coming too. And the wild beasts shall change their places. It shall change their places. The wild beasts shall change their places, and menstruous women shall bring forth monsters. That's going to take place. Menstruous women will bring forth monsters because people are in great denial. And because for these days, there's no need to talk about the root of this statement, but to say literally, it's happening again. Literally, truthfully, authentically, it's happening again. It's happening again. So, you know, in the book of Daniel, when it said, they shall mingle their seed with the seed of men, but they will not cleave one to another. Now, we know in the Old Testament, Genesis 6, that the sons of God looked upon the daughters of women, and they took unto themselves wives. And giants were born unto them, men of renown, right? Men of renown. But God, it grieved God that he made man. And they corrupted man, they corrupted the beasts of the earth also, and God sent that flood to destroy his creation, right? To destroy his creation. And when they corrupted man, they corrupted the beasts of the earth also, and God sent that flood to destroy his creation, right? To destroy his creation. And when he destroyed his creation, they were destroyed from among them. Correct? The animals. People forget about the animals. You get locked into giants. You start getting into carbon dating with these dinosaurs. And then when you realize the carbon dating is totally 100% messed up and guessed at, that threw everybody off. But because it was taught generation to generation to generation, because of the sheer volume of the topic, people think it's true. But it's not true. That's why things are showing up now. That's why things are swimming to the surface now. The corruption part is due to the sheer appetite of these things. No control over their desires. And the bodies of these things, the bodies constitute what desires they have. So what do you see when you see a dinosaur? Something huge with a big belly. Why? Demonic entities have an unquenchable desire. They have lusts, unquenchable lusts. That means they can never be satisfied. As a consequence, you have these large beasts with big teeth, big faces, big everything, vocal cords, and they had these insatiable appetites. You couldn't satisfy them with anything. Scientists are the ones who falsely classify these things. You cannot carbon date bones. In the head of the bones is 30 million years old, and the rib cage is 5 million years old, and the feet are 50 billion years old. You can't do that. That's what carbon dating yielded, because carbon dating is not going to work based on some consistent rate of decay when you have solar activity interacting with the earth, changing that decay rate of the elements on earth. You're not going to have some proper carbon dating from some dead plant life or something. That doesn't work. And they know even today they dig up fossils and species. And it just doesn't. The head will not match the torso, will not match the legs, will not match the tail. Won't do it. And why were the cowboys? You know how many cowboy stories I pulled? How many of the stories I pulled from people who first settled America, who did not have the knowledge of dinosaurs, and yet they described dinosaurs walking the earth. People that, like the scientists, who did not have the knowledge of dinosaurs, and yet they described dinosaurs walking the earth. People that, like the scientists, who were in 2000 and I believe it was 13, who were killed from some bird that came down, took two of the scientists, totally just severed in half the other one. Then it happened again. Now that site is, nobody can go up on that specific mountain because of these things that are up there, right? So through academia and persistence and the repetition of a message, people say, well, that's got to be true because it's in that book right there. That doesn't make it true. It doesn't make it true. That's why the world cannot believe in those things of the Father. You know why? Because what the Father gives, he gives by faith. And they cannot take anything on faith. Therefore, it doesn't make it true. That's why the world cannot believe in those things of the Father. You know why? Because what the Father gives, he gives by faith. And they cannot take anything on faith. Therefore, they cannot have the truth because Jesus said they cannot see it. So they can't have it. That's what Jesus said. And they try their best to throw people off, right? That's why they keep saying, trust the science, trust the science. Well, guess what? Where has science led us to? We're paying for high electric bills, still paying for water. The air is no good, is it? People are killing each other over supplies, right? People are dying every single day. They were starving, thousands of years ago. They're doing it today. Children are still dying in places that are extremely advanced as far as toys are dying in places that are extremely advanced as far as toys or technology is concerned. We have breakthroughs, but then when we have a real breakthrough, they won't share it with anybody. It's classified, stuck in some vault somewhere. While we do what? We fight over the scraps. While we try to work, people work themselves to the bones to go buy some clothes that somebody designed, worshiping the works of their own hands. They want to pay, they'll pay an extreme amount of money for the clothing somebody else made, living a life full of vanities. The very thing King Solomon said, don't live your life that way. Don't, all is vanity. That's why he said that. Because every time he said all is vanity, he gave a description of what he was talking about. People working themselves to the bones to pay for a car they can never pay for. And then they convince themselves, well, I have this car, it's a $250,000 car, and I love it. Why do you love it? It's just like that $5,000 car. Well, no, this is much better because, see, nothing is ripped and everything is, just like they made it. So that's men worshiping the works of their own hands, the very thing God said don't ever do. They do every day. And they teach people, when people grow up, they say, I can earn money and I can live comfortable and buy anything I want to buy. But they're not realizing something. All they're doing is buying something that some other human made. And then they worship that thing because people will now kill you if you lean on their car. See that? So they rate and value the stuff they own over another human being. Nothing should be on their car. See that? So they rate and value the stuff they own over another human being. Nothing should be rated above a human being made in the image and likeness of the Creator. Nothing. If God calls it, if he called it precious, humanity, and if we are truly his family, then we'll see humanity as precious. And we will not put animals, we will not put technology, nor these personal aspirations to gain something somebody else made above anything else, which brings, let's continue to read. Because here it comes, and here it is, there shall be confusion also in many places, and fire shall be oft found in the sweet. Saltwater intrusion. You guys awake? Saltwater intrusion. That means where you have that sweet water means drinkable or fresh water, good water, right? So where you have good water, you're going to have salt water. That's exactly what's happening. Salt water intrusion. And for those other places, they're drying totally up. But salt water is still taking place. There's salt water in the Mississippi River right now. There's salt water in places there should be no salt water. None. This is, these things, if they're underway, what time is it here? Let me hurry up. Okay, and it says, and all friends shall destroy one another. Isn't that something? Listen, all friends shall destroy one another. That was impossible about, 40 years ago. That was impossible. But through social media, many have been destroyed. Do you guys know that the divorce rate skyrocketed since social media? Do you know that families have split up and all nations have been altered due to social media, right? You see a country and the people rebel. Why do they rebel? Why are the Chinese rebelling against the government? Because they can see other nations live without a government like the Chinese. That's why. Had they never seen any other nation, they would appreciate the small things they have. It's when you see the big things, you rebel against the small things. And we all know this. And when you do nation-to-nation comparisons, you'll look at another nation or something. It's just like you living, right, as a child. As soon as you go to your friend's house and they live better than you do, you go back to your house and it's just like you living, right? As a child. As soon as you go to your friend's house and they live better than you do, you go back to your house and you say, well, how come we don't have that? I want that. I want this. I want that, because you're doing that comparison thing. Ladies, you know this all too well. You go see another lady and say, I want that kind of shirt. I want those pants, that dress, those shoes. We do this all, gentlemen. You do the same thing. You see somebody walking down the street, they're fit. Oh, you start sucking in your stomach. You do the same thing. We contrast and compare everything, and then we want the greater thing. When you want the greater thing, you begin to rebel against what you have. There's no more contentment anywhere, because somebody always has something better than you. Why do you think everybody goes and they run to change the iPhone from 13 to 14 when they're almost exactly the same phone? How many people use their camera on the iPhone 14, right? But then they didn't use the features on the 13 or the 12 or the 11 or the 10. See, the point is they have these dumb selling points. They'll say, buy this phone, the Pixel, because of the pictures it takes. Buy the 14 because of the extra, we changed the filter on one of the cameras. But then you ask them the tough question, is it really the same camera? Oh yeah, we never changed. It's the same thing. We just put thicker little plate on there, and we just enabled, a couple more pixels in there. That's all. We sell it because we were going broke, and they busted in and messed it up some stuff. We know we're getting sued left and right. We need that money or we're going to die. That's the real story. They have people fooled. I know people right now, they say, oh no, don't buy Microsoft. Don't buy Android. Buy Apple, because nobody can look into their stuff. Really? Because I know it was a terrible incident, but that made me so sick. That made me so sick. That made me sick. Because they just outright lied. After those crime interviews, sales on the iPhone went up because they made that statement they could not get into the phone. They couldn't do it. But see, people are not thinking. You get that same scenario where a phone is locked, right? But the person truly can't remember anything, not even who they are. They call up Apple. They give them they tell them who they are. They give them no credentials. They remember where they got the phone from, and Apple unlocks everything. But they find a phone, same scenario, but it belongs to somebody else, and it happens to be a crime and no credentials. They remember where they got the phone from, and Apple unlocks everything. But they find a phone, same scenario, but it belongs to somebody else, and it happens to be a crime, and all of a sudden, no technology they have can get to the phone. Are you kidding me? Is that a joke? You have to get in the phone to coordinate the phone call, because you have to triangulate the position for location. Every single phone call they have lost their minds. And the public ate that up. And they said, oh, they can't get into your phone. So I'm going to get the Apple phone. And people just do that. It's the craziest thing. My point is, we have gotten to a point where it seems like people can no longer self-evaluate things. They don't have the knowledge base, or something has gone. See, we have a faith in my generation. We have a faith in the Lord, right? And because you have a faith, you have your self-evaluate things. They don't have the knowledge base, or something has gone. See, we have a faith in my generation. We have a faith in the Lord, right? And because you have a faith, you have your faith in the Lord. You don't have your faith in everything else. And so when everybody else starts saying things, you don't take what they say as gospel, because you already have a higher standard. But for this new generation, they don't have that higher standard for the most part. So they choose their higher standard of men's creations and of men. They do. That's why it disturbed me with the last 3 presidents we have had. That was very disturbing to me, because people worshiped those presidents. They did worship them. And every president that is ever worshipped, they're also going to be cursed. came to pass because it wasn't a sober saying. The Lord is giving us ample opportunity to awaken, to really open our eyes, and to really take a second look around and to get some things right before the stirring begins. Because what I'm reading out of Esdras is about to get worse, much worse. I'm just talking about all friends shall destroy one another, as was our initial statement here, initial premise of this conversation. That's exactly what people are doing. People are crushed by social media. More and more teens are committing suicide every single day. They will not publish it when a 5-year-old commits suicide because that 5-year-old comprehends. And you and I, and those like us who believe in Christ, the Lord is still asking, are you willing to truly be sent? Not to be sent and you make up your own standard and make everybody follow it. No. To be sent with the real gospel of Jesus Christ. To be that beacon of light, that voice that somebody needs to hear. Let me read this small one here. Friends shall destroy one another. Then shall wit hide itself. This is forming right now. Listen, wit is going to hide itself, and understanding withdraw itself into its chamber, and shall be sought of many, and yet not be found. Then shall unrighteousness and income be multiplied upon the earth. That's happening already. Wit, right? Wit. Let's call wit, because I know what the English definition is, but let's call wit intestinal fortitude of truth. Let's call it that, right? Which means when somebody's on a podium speaking to 1,000 people, you're in a crowd of people, and they say, hey, this guy's a good guy. But the Lord clearly shared something else with you. Wit would be for you to stand up in that crowd, that murderous crowd, and say, no, Jesus is Lord, not mankind. That's wit. That won't be found anymore. So that means no one will oppose the mobs. People can call a mob, a group of people, for whatever reason they do. But you know and I know, in these last mob, a group of people, for whatever reason they do. But you know and I know, in these last few years, when people get together, no matter if it's for a good or bad cause, something evil comes out of it. I'm talking about in the street. I'm not talking about in the name of Christ. When people get together, some evil is formed there. But all that's leaving, right? All those with intestinal fortitude won't be there because of the sheer, if friends are all going to, turn on one another, you won't be able to trust anybody. If wit is going to be gone, nobody's going to have that intestinal fortitude of authenticity bound in righteousness to say the opposite of any crowd. There's something I will not follow. I will not follow. I won't do it because the Lord taught me something early, that if too many people believe it and follow it, it's not right. Christianity, you don't have everybody is not following Christianity. Many claim to be a Christian. Not many talk about the gospel of Jesus Christ in these days. Not many honor Christ with his own gospel these days. Many are preaching their own gospel. I don't go with the flow. Have you noticed? I don't. Understanding will withdraw itself into a secret chamber, which means people are going to be in utter confusion. The Lord says, nations perplexed, nations distressed with these predicaments, and they say, I don't understand what happened. Now, you and I can probably see it clearly. They have no comprehension of it. Kids, I see 16-year-olds and 18-year-olds and 20-year-olds and 25-year-olds doing that same thing right now. Right now, they're saying, I don't understand how things got this way. What do you mean you don't understand? That's what I'm saying internally. How can they not understand? And then I'm reminded. They didn't go through your process yet, Mike. And they're not willing to go through that process. So they'll have no understanding unless God give it to them. We not in those days. Do you see these days forming? And we're just starting on this. This is something. It'll get to the point. Starting on this. This is something. It'll get to the point. Just like this conversation. Because of certain points I used. Backlash. It's going to happen. It will take place. Folks, that's all I have for tonight. That's it. That's it. I am, well, just a little over. Not a big deal. That's all I have, but you can see where I was going. You could see. Boy, time flew by, didn't it? It flew by. Listen. This is the beginning of a conversation that we have to go into the second part of, which is the second deluge, which should wrap up this conversation. We're going to have that tomorrow night because there's some major points and formations of things. But most importantly, there's some spiritual happenings that are heavy deluge, which should wrap up this conversation. We're going to have that tomorrow night because there's some major points and formations of things. But most importantly, there's some spiritual happenings that are heavy upon so many. And it really is time to be both awakened, to understand about the second deluge, and to be able to stand by God's standards in truth, for all these things that are forming in truth. And before you say it can't be done, I'm a living witness that it can be done. If I can talk to you about things that are relevant to your life, then I'm telling you it's possible. To learn of those things is a blessing. It really is. To have what we have here is just a blessing. Think of, some of you, I want you to think of something before I go. It wasn't more than 20 years ago. You couldn't even be yourself around other people, could you? Look at you now. Look at you now. Remember when you said to yourselves, I can't even be myself around other people. And how many of you were with someone, but you could not be that Christian you wanted to be? How many had to compromise who they were just to survive? And it was bondage to you. You know what the Lord did? He gave you each other. That's what he did. He gave you each other. Please remember that. And for all of you that are about to be pulled into the chat room, never forget that. That's one of the greatest blessings you'll ever have in your life, is one another. If you have questions, make sure you jot them down, bring them tomorrow. Can you do that? Can you do that? And we continue this talk. We can do that. Just jot them down. And we'll continue this conversation tomorrow. You guys look after one another, right? Look after one another. Encourage one another in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And let's all stand up as best we can to encourage that we may keep going. You're royal children, you really are. Because if you were not, you would not believe in Christ Jesus. The Lord is doing this, right? Not us, the Lord is. He's the author and finisher of our faith. He will finish the work he began in you. He will do that based upon himself. All I can do is talk about it. but I do love talking about it. And I do love encouraging. I do.